The strange how time doesn't really heal all wounds. They say a year is enough to move on, to rebuild, to feel whole again. For me, though, it feels like I've spent the past 12 months carrying a weight I can't seem to set down. My name is Everett, and a year ago, I signed the papers that ended my marriage to the woman I thought I'd grow old with. Her name was Lenora. Beautiful, charming, with a laugh that could brighten the darkest room. At least, that's the version of her I fell in love with. But as it turns out, the person you marry isn't always the person they become. Or maybe, I didn't see who she really was until it was too late. I remember the day we ended things like it just happened. We sat at the dining table that used to host anniversary dinners and lazy weekend breakfasts. The same table where we dreamed about vacations we'd never take and children we'd never have. And there, in the silence of that room, she slid the divorce papers across to me. I didn't cry that day. Not in front of her, anyway. My pride wouldn't let me. Instead, I nodded, signed where I was supposed to, and watched as she walked out of my life. For months after, I told myself it was for the best. She had cheated, lied, and shattered the foundation of our life together. But no matter how many times I repeated those truths, the memories of her still lingered. Her perfume on an old sweater I couldn't throw away. The photo albums collecting dust in the corner of my closet. Her favorite coffee mug that I couldn't bring myself to use. I thought I'd made peace with it all, even if the scars were still fresh. Then, out of nowhere, I received an email from her. The subject line read, "Something you need to know." My stomach dropped the moment I saw her name in my inbox. I froze, my mind racing through the possibilities. What could she possibly have to say to me now? Against my better judgment, I clicked on it. The words on the screen made my breath catch. "I've been holding onto a secret, Everett. I didn't know how to tell you before, but I need to now. Please read this all the way through. It's about us. About what really happened." I stopped reading and leaned back in my chair, my hands trembling. What was she talking about? What secret? Hadn't she already done enough damage? As much as I wanted to slam my laptop shut and walk away, I couldn't. I had to know. I forced myself to keep reading, though every word felt like a knife twisting in my chest. "There's something I didn't tell you during the divorce," her email continued. "It's not about Joel. Well, not entirely. You see, there was more to what happened than you ever knew. Joel. That name was like a slap to the face. He was the man who had ruined everything. Or at least that's what I thought. Joel had been her coworker, someone she claimed was just a friend. I trusted her. How could I not? But trust is a fragile thing, and once it's broken, it's impossible to put back together. "I lied to you, Everett," she wrote. "Not just about the affair, but about why it happened. I told myself you didn't deserve the truth because it would hurt you too much. But now I realize that not telling you was worse." My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely scroll through the email. What was she talking about? What truth? I thought I'd uncovered everything during the divorce. She'd been unfaithful, plain and simple. What else could there possibly be? The next line hit me like a freight train. Joel wasn't the only one, Everett. There were others. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My mind went blank, my vision blurred, and I felt like I might be sick. Others? How many? Who? When? I stood up from my chair and started pacing the room, my thoughts spinning out of control. Every memory of our marriage suddenly felt tainted, like a photograph smudged with dirt. How many times had I trusted her when I shouldn't have? How many lies had she told me while looking me in the eye? But the worst part wasn't even the betrayal. It was the fact that she had held onto this secret for so long. She had walked out of my life, leaving me to pick up the pieces, all while keeping this truth buried. I sat back down and stared at the screen. Part of me wanted to stop reading, to delete the email and pretend I'd never seen it. But I couldn't. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at the screen. Minutes? Hours? Time seemed to stand still as her words sank in. Joel wasn't the only one, Everett. There were others. Those words looped in my head like a broken record, each repetition stinging more than the last. I forced myself to read further, each sentence feeling heavier than the one before. "There's no excuse for what I did," she wrote. I know that, and I'm not telling you this to seek forgiveness or to justify my actions. But I need you to understand something. I wasn't in a good place back then. Our marriage, it wasn't what I thought it would be, and I didn't know how to talk to you about it. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. So now it was my fault? She was trying to rewrite history, as if the blame could somehow shift to me for her choices. But I kept reading, needing to know the full extent of her betrayal. The truth is, Joel was just the beginning, she continued. After him, there were 2 others. They weren't serious, at least not to me. I convinced myself that it didn't mean anything, that it was just a way to fill the void I felt. But the lies, the sneaking around, it all spiraled out of control. By the time you started to suspect something was wrong, I was in so deep that I didn't know how to stop. I slammed my laptop shut, the sound echoing through the empty house. My pulse was racing, my breathing shallow. I felt like I was drowning in her words, in the sheer magnitude of what she had done. For a moment, I thought about calling her. I wanted to scream at her, to demand answers, to ask her why she thought it was okay to keep all of this from me for so long. But I knew it wouldn't change anything. Nothing she could say would undo the damage she had caused. I stood up and paced the room, my mind racing. Memories of our time together flooded back. Holidays, birthdays, quiet nights on the couch. How many of those moments had been a lie? How many times had she smiled at me, kissed me, while secretly betraying me? And then, as if on autopilot, I opened the laptop again. I couldn't leave it unfinished. I needed to know everything, no matter how much it hurt. The email continued. I know this is a lot to take in, and I'm sorry for the pain I've caused you. But there's one more thing I need to tell you. This is the hardest part, and I've debated whether or not to say it. But you deserve the truth, Everett. You always have. My heart pounded in my chest as I scrolled down to the next paragraph, terrified of what I was about to read. It wasn't just about the affairs, she wrote. It was about something deeper, something I didn't even fully understand at the time. I felt trapped in our marriage, like I was losing myself. I thought that stepping outside of it would give me clarity, would help me figure out what I really wanted. But all it did was make everything worse. I stopped reading and stared at the screen, trying to process her words. Was this supposed to make me feel better? To hear that she destroyed our marriage because she was confused? But then came the real bombshell. There was one affair, though, that wasn't like the others. It lasted longer and it was different. It wasn't just physical, Everett. It was emotional, too. His name was Marcus. You never met him, but he knew everything about you, about us. And I think, in a way, that's what made it so easy for me. He understood my struggles because he had his own. Marcus. Another name, another betrayal. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. How could she write this so matter-of-factly, like she was confessing to breaking a vase or losing her keys? And then, as if the pain of her confession wasn't enough, the final paragraph sent me over the edge. There's something else about Marcus that I need to tell you, something that's been weighing on me for the past year. It's about the time we spent together and the consequences of it. I can't put it into words in an email, Everett. We need to talk in person. Please, meet me. I'll explain everything. I slammed the laptop shut again and leaned back in my chair, my hands shaking. Meet her? After all of this? What could she possibly say that would make any of this better? But deep down, I knew I couldn't ignore her. I needed answers. I needed closure. The following morning, I sat in my car outside the cafe where Lenora had asked to meet. I had barely slept the night before, my mind replaying her email over and over again. What was she going to tell me? What was so important that it couldn't be put into words? I spotted her through the window before she saw me. She looked different, older maybe, or perhaps it was the weight of her own guilt that made her appear so. For a moment I considered driving away, but I knew I couldn't. I walked into the cafe, my footsteps heavy, and approached her table. She looked up as I sat down, her eyes filled with something I couldn't quite place. Regret? Sadness? Everett, she began, her voice soft. Thank you for coming. I don't know why I'm here, I replied, my tone cold. But you wanted to talk, so talk. She nodded, her hands trembling as she clutched her coffee cup. I don't even know where to start. There's so much I need to say. Start with Marcus, I said bluntly. Who is he? And why was he so important to you? She took a deep breath, her eyes filling with tears. Marcus he was someone I connected with on a level I didn't think was possible. It wasn't just about attraction. He understood me in a way I felt you never could. Her words cut like a knife, but I kept my expression stoic. So, you cheated on me because I didn't understand you? Is that it? It's not that simple, she said, her voice breaking. I was lost, Everett. I didn't know who I was anymore, and Marcus. He gave me a sense of purpose. I leaned back in my chair, my arms crossed. And what exactly did this purpose lead to, Lenora? Why am I here? She hesitated, her eyes darting away from mine. There's something you don't know about Marcus. Something that changes everything. I stared at her, waiting for her to continue. Everett, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Marcus, he's dead. I froze, the weight of her words hitting me like a punch to the gut. Dead? What did that have to do with me? I don't understand, I said, my voice shaking. What does that have to do with us? She took another deep breath, her tears falling freely now. Because before he died, Marcus told me something. Something about you. And it's the reason I had to send that email. It's the reason I couldn't keep this secret any longer. Her words hung in the air like a thick fog. My mind was racing, trying to piece together what she could possibly mean. Why would Marcus, a man I never met, have something to say about me? Lenora, I said sharply. You're not making any sense. What did Marcus tell you? She hesitated, biting her lip as her fingers nervously traced the edge of her coffee cup. He told me something that I didn't want to believe at first. Something that made me question everything I thought I knew about us. I leaned forward, my patience running thin. Stop dancing around it and just tell me, Lenora. What did he say? She looked up at me, her eyes glistening with tears. Marcus said he knew you. That he'd met you before we ever even got married. I blinked, confused. What? That's impossible. I've never met him in my life. That's what I thought too, she said quickly, her voice trembling. But then he told me how. He said you used to work for the same company years ago. That he recognized you the first time I mentioned your name. I shook my head, the confusion turning to frustration. I've never worked with anyone named Marcus. If this is your way of trying to shift the blame or confuse me, it's not working. It's not about blame, she insisted, leaning closer. It's about the truth, Everett. Because what he told me, it changes everything. I stared at her, the weight of her words pressing down on me. Then say it. What truth, Lenora? She hesitated for a moment before finally whispering the words that would shatter my world all over again. Marcus told me that he's the reason we met. I froze, my mind scrambling to process what she just said. What are you talking about? You and I met through mutual friends at a party. What does he have to do with that? She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. That's not the whole story. He told me he orchestrated it. He set us up, Everett. And I didn't know until it was too late. I leaned back in my chair, the air knocked out of me. Set us up? Why would he do that? What could he possibly gain from it? Lenora wiped her tears, her voice trembling as she spoke. He said it was a joke at first. A way to get back at you for something that happened at work. I didn't know any of this when we met, Everett, I swear. I thought it was fate, just like you did. A joke, I repeated, my voice rising. He ruined our lives for a joke? She nodded, looking down at her hands. It wasn't until later that he told me the truth. He never expected us to get serious, let alone get married. He thought it would be funny to see you fall for someone he picked out of the blue. But then it got complicated. Complicated how? I demanded, my voice cold. She looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite place. Regret, maybe, or guilt. He said he started to fall for me too. That's why he came back into my life after all those years. He couldn't let it go. My stomach churned as her words sank in. Marcus had been pulling the strings all along, manipulating us both. And Lenora, she'd let him. I don't believe this, I said, shaking my head. You expect me to believe that some guy I've never met planned all of this just to mess with me? I didn't want to believe it either, she said softly. But when he showed me the emails, the photos, it all made sense. Emails? Photos? I asked, my voice sharp. What are you talking about? She hesitated, as if debating whether or not to tell me the rest. He kept everything, Everett. Every message, every detail about how he set us up. He showed me proof. And then he told me something else. Something I haven't been able to forget. What? I asked, my heart pounding. She looked me in the eye, her voice barely above a whisper. He told me he regretted everything, that he wished he could take it all back. But by then, it was too late. I stared at her, trying to make sense of what I had just heard. The weight of her confession felt unbearable, like the ground beneath me was crumbling. Lenora, I said slowly, my voice barely steady. What exactly did he show you? What proof? She swallowed hard, her gaze shifting downward. He showed me emails from the time before we met. He had screenshots of conversations where he and his friends joked about setting you up, about how easy it would be to manipulate everything. He even had pictures of me, of you, of the party where we met. He'd planned it all, Everett. A cold shiver ran through me. And you just went along with it? No, she exclaimed, her voice cracking. I didn't know any of this until years later. I swear, when we met, I had no idea I was part of some cruel joke. By the time I found out, we were already married, and I didn't know how to tell you. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. For years, I had believed in the story of how we met, the serendipity, the spark, the idea that we were meant to be. And now she was telling me it was all a lie, a game orchestrated by a man I didn't even know. Why are you telling me this now? I asked, my voice cold. Why wait until after the divorce? She took a deep breath, her hands trembling as she gripped her coffee cup. Because Marcus is dead, Everett. And before he died, he sent me something. A folder. He told me to share it with you. He said you deserved to know the truth. Folder. The word hung in the air like a dark cloud. Where is it? I asked, my voice sharp. Lenora hesitated, then reached into her bag and pulled out a small USB drive. She slid it across the table toward me, her hands shaking. It's all on here. The emails, the pictures, everything. I stared at the drive, my stomach churning. A part of me didn't want to take it, didn't want to see the evidence that would confirm just how deeply I'd been deceived. But I couldn't walk away now, not after everything she'd told me. I picked up the drive, my fingers tightening around it. Is there anything else I need to know? I asked, my voice hollow. She hesitated, her eyes filling with tears. Just that. I'm sorry, Everett. For everything. For the lies, for the betrayal. I know I can't undo what I've done, but I hope someday you'll understand why I had to tell you. I stood up, slipping the USB drive into my pocket. I don't know if I'll ever understand, Lenora, but I'll look at what's on here. And after that, I don't think I want to see you again. Her face crumpled, but I didn't stay to watch. I turned and walked out of the cafe, the weight of the USB drive feeling like a stone in my pocket. Back at home, I sat at my desk, staring at the USB drive. My hands hovered over my laptop, my mind racing with questions. What would I find on it? Would it confirm everything Lenora had said? Or would it be something even worse? Finally, I took a deep breath and plugged the drive into my computer. A single folder appeared on the screen, labeled simply, Truth. I clicked it open, and my heart sank as I saw the files inside. There were dozens of emails, all dated from the months leading up to the night I met Lenora. I clicked on the first one, and the truth hit me like a tidal wave. The email was from Marcus, addressed to a group of his friends. The subject line read, The Setup Plan. The message was short but devastating. All right, guys, I've got it all figured out. Lenora's perfect for this. She's single, outgoing, and just his type. I'll make sure they meet at the party, and the rest will take care of itself. This is going to be hilarious. I scrolled through email after email, each one confirming what Lenora had told me. Marcus had planned everything, down to the smallest detail. He had even convinced Lenora to attend the party, knowing she'd be the perfect bait. And then there were the photos, grainy pictures of me at the party, laughing and talking to Lenora. Pictures of Marcus and his friends watching from the sidelines, their faces filled with smug satisfaction. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me as I realized just how deeply I'd been manipulated. My entire relationship with Lenora, the woman I thought I'd spend my life with, had been built on a lie. But then I saw the final file in the folder, a video. My hands trembled as I clicked on it, unsure if I could handle any more. The video opened with Marcus sitting in what looked like a hospital room. His face was pale, his voice weak. "Everett," he began, his eyes staring directly into the camera. "If you're watching this, it means I didn't make it. And it also means Lenora finally told you the truth." I leaned forward, my heart pounding. "I don't expect you to forgive me," Marcus continued. "What I did to you was cruel, and I've regretted it every day since. I thought it would be funny, but it wasn't. It was wrong, and it destroyed so much more than I ever intended. I'm sorry, Everett, for everything." The video ended, leaving me staring at the screen in stunned silence. I sat in my chair for what felt like hours, staring at the dark screen. The weight of Marcus's final words pressed down on me. "I'm sorry, Everett, for everything." That was it? That was supposed to be enough? He had manipulated my entire life, interfered with my relationship, set things in motion that eventually destroyed my marriage, and now all I had was a video of him apologizing from a hospital bed? I exhaled slowly, running a hand through my hair. The anger inside me was sharp, but beneath it was something else, something heavier. Exhaustion. A deep, bone-level tiredness that no amount of sleep could fix. The more I thought about it, the more I realized something strange. This should have devastated me. A year ago, knowing that my relationship had been built on manipulation and lies would have wrecked me beyond repair. But now I just felt empty. I had spent so long trying to make sense of everything, trying to understand why Lenora had done what she did, why she had chosen someone else, why our life had fallen apart. But now I knew the truth. It wasn't just about her. It had never been. Our relationship had been a game from the beginning. A cruel joke played by someone who never stopped to consider the consequences. And Lenora? Maybe she had been a victim of that game, too. But in the end, she had made her choices. I had spent a year carrying this weight. A year haunted by questions that no longer mattered. The truth had finally been laid bare in front of me. And now, I had only one decision left to make. What to do with it. I looked down at the USB drive still in my hand, turning it over between my fingers. Destroy it? Keep it? Send it back to Lenora and let her carry the burden of what she had done? No, that wasn't my responsibility anymore. I stood up, walked to my bedroom, and pulled out a small box from the back of my closet. Inside were the last remnants of my past life. Our wedding photos, old love letters, keepsakes from a life that now felt like it had belonged to someone else. I placed the USB drive inside, shut the box, and put it away. I wasn't going to let this define me anymore. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. A strange sense of clarity settling over me. I stretched my arms, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time, lightness. I had a choice. I could let this knowledge consume me, let it drag me down even further, or I could finally let go. For the past year, I had allowed myself to be trapped in the past. Every unanswered question, every painful memory had kept me tied to something that no longer existed. But I wasn't that man anymore. I got out of bed, brewed a cup of coffee, and sat by the window, watching the morning sun rise. It was just another day. Nothing special, nothing dramatic, but somehow it felt different. I took a sip of my coffee, savoring the quiet moment. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need validation. And I certainly didn't need to hold onto the ghosts of my past. Lenora had sent me that email expecting something. Maybe closure, maybe forgiveness, maybe even some twisted version of redemption. But in the end, she had given me something much more valuable. Freedom. I glanced at my phone, at the unread message from her that I still hadn't responded to. Maybe she was waiting for me to react, to confront her, to demand more answers. But I didn't need to. I deleted the message without reading it, set my phone down, and turned back to the window. For the first time in a long time, the past didn't feel like a weight on my shoulders. It was just the past, and I was finally ready to move forward.